Hey there, whether you have been using Lightroom for a year or you've been using it for over a decade like I have, there are always things you can learn. And so I have 3 Lightroom hacks that I use all the time that you may or may not know, and I want you to stick around and find out. Hey there, welcome. I am so excited that you found my YouTube channel. I'm Katelyn, and this is a place where we empower photographers to build profitable and purposeful businesses while also giving you a little behind the scenes into our personal life as well. So I'm excited about this because I don't know how many students we have in our KJ consistency course, which is our editing and workflow course, but it's over 3,700 and something. Lots of photographers in that course, and there are so many people in that course, and I hear them say things like, I've never heard of this slider. I didn't know Lightroom could do this. And so I'm taking 3 of those Lightroom tips and tricks that I use all the time that don't get talked about that often, especially in the wedding and portrait photography world. And I'm just going to walk you through how I use them, and maybe it can be a huge help to you. And so I'm constantly learning new things in Lightroom, and I think that everyone in their business, no matter how seasoned or how new they are, can learn something new if they're open to it. So we're going to dive right in. All right, so tip number 1 is that a lot of people have presets that they use, but not everyone has an import preset that they use to kind of give their images a jump start. So I don't know about you, but raw images sometimes straight out of camera can look really defeating, and they're really overwhelming sometimes. They just don't look great. And for me, I've found that, you know what, I'm doing the same slight adjustments to every single image. So no matter if I'm editing a ring shot or reception shot or a portrait that was taken in glowy sunset light, no matter what, I've found I'm always doing the same slight adjustments to get to a starting place where I feel like, okay, I can see that this image is gonna be great. I can see where it's going. So I decided to take those slight adjustments and to save an import preset that I can apply to my images on import. So what that means is that every time that I import images, I'm never seeing them straight out of camera like fully raw. I'm seeing them with a little bit of a jump start, a little bit of an enhancement or an improvement that really makes me feel more motivated when I'm editing. So what does this look like? So let's look at this image, for example. This image, this is the final image, and so there's some pretty drastic adjustments here. But if I look at this image straight out of camera, I'm going to apply the Katelyn Basic Import preset, which you can't tell a huge difference. But if I went ahead and said, okay, straight out of camera looks like this, and then KJ Basic Import preset looks like this, you can see that it gives me a head start and it shows me where I'm going, where I'm headed. So just slight adjustments. You'll see exposure was bumped up, contrast was bumped up, a little bit of fill light or shadows, and then a slight adjustment in the tonal curve. So KJ Consistency Course students actually have access to this basic import preset, and I have people ask me for it all the time, and I tell them, guys, it's so simple. It's slight adjustments that lead me toward the ultimate style that I'm going for. And I'll show you how. So let's just start from scratch. So let's take this image straight out of camera. It's pretty dark. So I'm going to bump up the exposure just a little bit, bump up the blacks, maybe I brighten the shadows. All right. So not a lot of adjustments. There are more adjustments to mine, but just for the sake of time, those are a few adjustments. You would have to do whatever you normally do to your images. So make slight adjustments and then just go over here to the preset dialog box and create a preset. So I'm just going to call this the KJ Import 2 underneath the group user presets. So you create it. And then you can go actually to the import dialog box. All right. So when you import your images into Lightroom, you can go to this tab that says apply during import, and you can actually take one of your user presets. So we just made KJ Import 2. And now every time that I import images, it's going to apply that preset to every single image, which means that when you go in to start editing, every single image has a starting point. It's a jump start. It gives you motivation to dive right in and get your edits done because you're taking away a few initial steps. So the second tip has everything to do with managing your greens. So I see a lot of photographers, especially in this season of our industry, a lot of people are really obsessed with tweaking their greens, which I think is great because a lot of times greens can be really yellow, really neon. And so you want to control them a little bit. And for most photographers, they do that by scrolling down and going to the HSL slider, which is very normal, and there's so much power. You can do so much with this part of the develop module. However, I love to approach adjusting my greens by scrolling all the way down to the calibration tab. In the calibration tab, you'll see something called the green primary. And the reason why I love this is because basically what I want to do with my greens and with my style, I can do with one adjustment of one slider. So when you notice this image, like I like the greens in this image, there's a little bit of pop. It's definitely not muted. There's still great saturation, but this is what it looked like straight out of camera, which to some people this would be great. But for me, I just see a lot of yellow tones that I don't love. And so the green primary takes out the yellow tones without taking away the vibrancy of the greens. Now, if you really want to minimize the intensity of your greens, you can also desaturate. These are options that can be done in the HSL area. But for me, I love doing it in the green primary. Maybe I just like being a little bit of a rebel and doing something a little bit differently, but I really like my adjustments here, and I tend to default to adjusting my greens down here rather than tweaking things in the HSL slider all the time. It's not that I don't use the HSL slider, I definitely do, but the green primary is a tool that I think a lot of people don't even know what it can do for them and for their work. So the third tip is all about the graduated filter. And you may think, oh, I've heard of that, or I use that all the time, and that's great. But a lot of people have no idea that they can actually select one area of the image to brighten or darken or tweak in any way that they want. And it gives you a lot of power in certain situations. So I don't use this very often, okay? I don't use this very often at all. But every now and then I find myself in a situation where I have an epic portrait, but I need some additional help, that I can't just adjust a setting that applies to the whole image. I need to just change one area of the image. So the image on the screen is from a beautiful parlor bridal suite in kind of a mansion. It's like a castle that's near our house. We shoot there often. And it's beautiful. The light is actually really, really pretty on the girls that are sitting in the front and the bride. But this group of girls in the back are a little underexposed. And then this part of the room is very underexposed. Why? Because there's only one set of 3 windows here. And those windows are kind of half size. They're not full length windows. If the windows over here were full length, then we would have so much light filling the room. This wouldn't be an issue. So what do I need to do here? I'm going to use the graduated filter, and I'm going to edit this image using kind of a special filter instead of just doing my normal edit, which doesn't require any certain areas being tweaked by themselves. So this is the final edit, and I want to show you exactly what I did. So the graduated filter is great because it applies an edit in a linear direction. The radial filter obviously applies in a circular radial sphere-like setting, but the linear aspect of the graduated filter allows you to provide this even gradual effect on an image, so you can't really tell that you actually edited with a filter. And I think that's the ultimate goal. Whenever you're editing, spot editing, using a filter, whether it's the graduated or radial, you want to make sure you're doing slight adjustments to where no one will look at the image and think, oh, I see what she did there. So when I click this, you'll see that I took it almost all the way down over the bride's face, just slightly. But I started from the right-hand corner and went down at an angle because that's the darkest part of the room. So I just bumped up the exposure a little bit, the contrast, a little bit of the shadows, and that's basically all that I did. And it allowed for the whole room to look bright. It allowed for the back row of bridesmaids to look properly exposed and equally exposed to the bride and the bridesmaids in the front. And that's exactly what I wanted. So this was before, and this was after. And I'm going to go ahead and take off the graduated filter so you can see what it looks like without. So without, is it bad? Is it horrible? No, but for my style, my eyes directly go to right here, how dark and heavy these girls look compared to the other girls. So again, this filter is great because when light is kind of falling off and getting darker in a corner, or it's gradually getting brighter, it's doing that in a linear pattern. Like you could do this with a brush. You could try doing this with the adjustment brush in Lightroom. But getting it even would be almost impossible. And so the graduated filter allows you to brighten, darken, add contrast, bump up the fill light, change the temperature even. It allows you to do that in a linear way on an image so that it's very, if you do it the right way, it's not very noticeable. And so you can apply these edits and you can kind of get away with things that you can't with any other filter. So if you love this and you thought, hey, maybe there are some other things that I don't know about Lightroom, I'm actually teaching my favorite Lightroom hacks and tips in a free class that you can access by clicking the link below, and I'd love to have you join me. So those tips are what I use in practically every part of my consistency journey to making sure my images and my work and my portfolio all look consistent. I use the 3 hacks that I'm talking about in this free training. So free training link is linked below. I'd love to have you join me. But thanks for tuning in. I hope this was helpful and that you can apply some of these tips with the very next shoot or wedding that you are editing.